It's bedtime again. You know what that means. Time for a spooky story. This one is part 1 of 6, and it's called Jonny and the Eye in the Field. Jonny's grandma lived way out in the country, where the sky stretched big and blue and the wind made the grass sway and dance. Behind her house was a wide empty field with nothing but weeds and wildflowers and a single wooden scarecrow that, to be honest with you, hadn't scared anything in years. But let me tell you, back in the day, this scarecrow was a real spooky fella. He could scare anything. You know, he'd scare crows and other things. But you know, as the years passed, I guess he sort of lost his touch, and old age can do that to a guy packed with hay. So one morning, Jonny went outside to chase grasshoppers. His grandma didn't have a TV, and she insisted that this was just as fun as watching cartoons. While he was out, he noticed something strange. The scarecrow was gone, and now sitting in its place was an eye. A giant eye sitting right there in the middle of the field like it had grown out of the dirt. It was the size of a frickin' Volkswagen Bug, big, round, unblinking, and the iris shimmered with strange colors swirling around like liquid. Jonny had never seen an eye outside of somebody's head, much less a giant one sitting in a field behind his grandma's house. He stared at it, dumbfounded, and then the eye stared back. A moment ago, it had been looking in the opposite direction, and now it faced directly at him. It didn't blink or move. And then Jonny felt a weird tug, almost as if he was falling forward despite standing still. Curious, he took a step closer. Whoosh, the wind kicked up all around him. The grass bent towards the eye like it was being pulled in. Jonny stopped. Something deep in his brain seemed to whisper a warning. Don't look too long. While typically Jonny would announce to anybody who would listen that he was quite the curious little coconut. But his survival instinct convinced him this wasn't the time for any tomfoolery, and he backed away slowly. Then from behind him, he heard a voice. Don't let it catch you. Jonny turned. An old man stood by the fence holding a walking stick. His eyes were cloudy, like he couldn't see. I was the first one to find it, the old man bragged. Oh yes, the eye and I, we go way back, don't we, eye? Jonny looked back at the eye, which remained completely still. The crazy old coot cackled. See? What did I tell you? We go way back. Best friends, the eye and I. Then more quietly, he covered half of his mouth and whispered to Jonny. Actually, I guess I'd say I am his best friend, but I wouldn't necessarily say he's mine. You know, I have a lot of friends. He's maybe only in my top 15 of my friends. Heck, maybe top 20 or 25. Like I said, I've got a lot of friends. The old man thought to himself for a second. Must just be something about me. I suppose I am pretty funny and, well, I tell great stories. Yes, that's probably why everybody likes me so much. Not too hard on the eyes either. The old man stared off into the distance proudly, then turned back to Jonny. Oh, hey there, kid. What were we talking about again? Jonny pointed and said, the eye? The old man slapped his knee and said, oh yes, that old thing. Be careful around that. I look too long. Now, wouldn't you know it takes pieces of me every time I sleep. Jonny's mouth went dry. What is it? The old man sighed and said, well, I'll tell you, but first I do need to confess something. You know, when I said we're friends, we're not really friends. Heck, it's not even really an eye. No, that there is more of a door, yes, but not one you want to go through. A door to where? Jonny said. The man shook his head. Well, how do I put this? What's the word? I guess I suppose you'd call it a void of sorts. Yes, that's it, a void. Yeah, a void. It's basically a place that defies time and space. The eye lures people in and keeps them forever, like pictures in a photo album. They float around in there forever, frozen and forgotten. Jonny thought for a moment, then asked, wait, why'd you lie about being friends? The old man shrugged casually and said, oh, you know, I just like to lie sometimes. Jonny nodded and then stared back at the eye for a second. The colors inside shifted. He thought he saw a girl floating inside. While her face was motionless, her expression looked panicked. She drifted forward towards Jonny until her face pressed against the invisible glass of the eye's giant pupil. Jonny backed away fast. Can we close it?" he asked. The man shook his head. No, I don't think so. I just try not to stare at it." Yep, actually, come to think of it, that's the only way it pulls you in. Just don't meet its gaze." Then the old man looked very serious. "Don't you ever meet its gaze, boy?" Jonny nodded. Okay. And then he ran back to his grandma's. That night, he stayed inside, but he dreamed of the eye, floating, turning, slowly blinking. He woke up with a start to find the grass outside his house, leaning in the same direction, all towards the field, towards the eye. Jonny closed the curtains. Later in the day, he noticed some sunlight peeking in through the window. He saw his dog Baxter's behind sticking out from under the curtains. He was looking out the window that Jonny had previously closed. Jonny called to him, "Baxter, come here, boy." But Baxter didn't move. Jonny rushed to the dog and pulled him out from looking out the window. For a moment, Baxter's gaze was glossy. But then he shook his little head and then snapped out of the trance. Afterwards, he looked up at Jonny, wagged his tail, and licked him in the face before happily prancing out of the room. Jonny shuddered. He realized that he may not be able to wash his hands with this eye business just yet. Not with it just sitting out there outside in the field, always watching. All right. Good night, Mads.